What industry is a lot shadier than it seems? Avocado farms. Most of the farms in Central America are taken over by the cartel because of how much money is in selling avocados. All trees can be shady AF tbh. The textbook industry Pearson is the fucking mafia. McGraw-Hill was the bane of my existence for years. Seriously? The funeral business preys on people's weakest moments to convince them to buy ridiculously unnecessary stuff. Ask a Mortician is a really good YouTube channel that tries to make the death industry more open and clear. Trucking. The margins are razor thin, and so everyone is trying to nickel and dime each other constantly. The drivers lie to their dispatchers. The dispatchers lie to the brokers. The brokers lie to the clients. All of this for like $50 minus $100 sometimes. I worked in trucking, and the head HR lady for our distribution center was skimming payroll, shorting the checks of the lowest people on the totem pole, then getting cash infusions to petty cash from corporate to return part of the theft is in emergency tied over until the employee's next check, then claiming the rest of the theft as an overage on the next payroll report. I am probably missing a step in her chain, but I am not an accountant. It was a scam. She managed to work for a couple of years due to a lack of oversight during nationwide management shifts. When she finally got caught, rather than take the bad publicity, the company just let her leave. The last I heard, she was working in the same position in an adjacent industry, but still involving transportation. C'est la vie. Health insurance. In the commercials it is all about caring for your health and stuff. But if you ever to get a serious illness, they will do anything to avoid paying for your treatment. Source. My mother got breast cancer and her health insurance made a business decision to let her die rather than pay the $40,000 for her treatment. They made that decision, then hired lawyers to make it happen. My mom got to fight them in court while going through chemo. She made it by mortgaging the house. She told me the insurance company caused her more stress than the prospect of dying. I buy insulin every month, and every month I literally have to beg my insurance over the phone about why I need this. It's scummy shit. Edit. This really blew up. Cliché. Thanks for my first silver and apparently platinum now too. This is dope lol. CBD. Lot of predatory companies making subpar products with questionable raw materials and then marking it way the fuck up and selling it as a miracle cure to vulnerable and ill-educated consumers. Usually have a high-power legal team on deck, but pay their workers shit and no benefits. Edit. Because so many people are asking. While I used to be in sales in the industry and have my own opinions about who's good out there, it's a woefully short list. You'll probably have your best luck checking out the top recommendations at our CBD. They have a whole pinned post about best companies that they've, hopefully, vetted well. Are CBD products not the actual marijuana regulated, or are they like the vitamin industry where most all of the products are suspect in? Aren't FDA approved? No FDA approvals now, just testing to ensure it's below the hempline in THC. Not an industry, but higher academia is badly broken. Some of the smartest people are some of the most badly exploited. Old tenured professors limit the number of faculty many departments can have, forcing people to work as postdocs forever, effectively doing all the work the professor should be doing in the first place. Meager pay and long hours, plus constant pressure makes postdocs some of the most depressed people. The grad students are no better either. A lot of the times grad students don't complain about ill treatment, harassment and outright bullying, as they don't want to jeopardize their prospects of graduating. If you're a foreigner, this situation becomes even worse. Whether you're the grad student or postdoctoral researcher, it's a pyramid scheme. Way more new PhDs are granted each year than open faculty jobs. If anyone is reading this and is considering a PhD, you should choose a field that has a robust non-academic labor market. The odds of getting a faculty job are shrinking every year in post-coronavirus. It's only getting worse. Edit. Stop telling me it's not a literal pyramid scheme. I know. I'm working in academia as a professor *. All industries are shadier than they seem, monsieur. I used to work for a flute manufacturer and it was shady as hell. Deeks. I don't want to name the manufacturer, but it was around the 2008 financial crisis and the place was equity-owned and leveraged to fucking Mars. The CEO was committing bank fraud and screwing contractors while laying off employees and enriching himself. Was there a whistleblower among the flutists? LMAO dead. The maritime industry. Most of the big companies do things by the book and treat crews well because they're afraid of lawsuits and unions. But many smaller, mom-and-pop companies break laws and violate safety regulations with reckless abandon because they're not as visible and can stay under the radar, so to speak. It's very common for a small company to ask a captain crew to do something illegal and dangerous in order to increase profit, and for the captain crew to comply out of fear of losing their jobs. And that's just the U.S. maritime industry. Sailors from poorer nations who work on ships are often fed little more than rice and cheap ramen for months at a time and paid pennies for their backbreaking work. I love running tugs for a living, but the industry as a whole is rife with shady business. IDK if it falls under maritime. But I took one look at the job listing for a cruise ship and now I tell all my coworkers to never take a job with one. I'm a stagehand and theater technician. I make decent money fresh out of college. $18 minus $24 an hour depending on venue. Even without joining the union. Because I do specialized work. Looked into a lighting tech spot on a cruise ship, and I'd be getting minimum wage working 50 hours and 7 days a week. Wi-Fi on board costs money out of my paycheck. I'd be in charge of passenger safety off hours if an alarm goes off and we have to get people onto rescue rafts. I'd have a roommate in a small bunk, and all my wages would go directly into a ship debit card so I could give my income straight back to the company to eat. Something about living and working on a boat in the middle of the ocean seems to make employers think they don't have to actually care for their employees. I can imagine working on a boat that isn't filled with people on vacation would be even worse. Dietary supplements. It's gotten better, but there's still a lot of half-truths and whole lies. Not all that long ago it was seriously like the Wild Wild West. And doing your own research is nearly impossible since the signal-to-noise ratio of the information is so low. As a chef owner, I would say delivery services like Grubhub. They take 30% of the sale, leaving the restaurant with basically $0 in profit. And their customer support is a joke. It's like they hate us. Fuck the monsieur never again. Domain names. There's so much shady stuff that goes on when it comes to domain names. Cyber squatting, sketchy registrars, domain hijacking, scams, predatory pricing, etc. Then there's the whole ICANN.org fiasco that's been in the news recently. Worked at a domain registrar. Can confirm monsieur domain squatting is a thing, and so is customers trying to blame you if they make a dumb third-party decision. Here's an example. The registrar I worked at had a rather unique domain name that they sold at a rather interesting time. I can't say what it was, but let's just say it had to do with a certain European country leaving a certain union. And the domain was a TLD with just that word in it. The day after everything went down, the former owner contacted us, passed account security, provided ID and told us to change the owner details to another person. He was all smug about how he made thousands off of this sale. Calls back half an hour later and what happened? The new owner stiffed. Hi monsieur, didn't pay a penny. But because the guy had gone through security, changed the owner details on the domain and pushed the button to transfer the domain to this other person at another registrar. It was out of our hands, and with the registry The deed was done, and this new person got a nice new domain with a very hard to get hold of name. For nothing. For the record, I'm part of that country and staunchly against what's happened. So being the person who authorized the details change and set the transfer in motion was a moment of malicious compliance I'll remember forever. So moral of the story, get paid before you authorize the transfer. Pet industry. Basement puppy mills and dogs that are so inbred they can hardly breathe. There are plenty of ethical breeders out there. And some unlicensed breeders are ethical even if in a legal gray zone. But the conditions of some of the so-called puppy mills can be really bad. Sometimes when breeds are mixed and the pup gets the recessive genes the breeders weren't looking for, they straight up euthanize it because they know it won't sell. Not to mention how many purebreds are actually not pure at all, and sold as is. Shady. Not just dogs. Tortoises at pet stores. Just find a responsible captive breeder and do not get one from a pet store. Also, macaws are another example. Bearded dragons should be okay, but that's probably the only reptile I'd buy from a pet store. Jewelry, gems, diamonds is pretty dark. I've seen that movie. Me too. Fuck Thanos. Advertising. We don't really give a fuck if it works, we already got your money. Even better. It's practically impossible to say it didn't work. Your sales stayed flat. Just think how much they would have dropped if you didn't run that ad campaign. And when you go out of business, we sell to the business that takes your place. Sunglass industry. Punny business. But, yes, it's true. I'll use Oakley as an example because it's literally close to home. Oakley has not been the same since they were bought out. Oakley was a great company to work for with great bonuses, swag, and extremely high company morale. Their HQ is one of the coolest buildings you could find and the people were always happy to work for a legendary company that really treated their employees right. Oakley knew their customers well, but at the end of the day, it's still a business, and Luxottica wanted that business. Luxottica bought them out in the end, but not through Oakley's own will. You see, Luxottica owns nearly all the major glasses brands in the stores that carry them. They are one step short of a full monopoly of the entire global eyewear industry. Luxottica wanted Oakley, so they took Oakley off all the shelves of every major glasses retailer until Oakley could do nothing but give in, squeezed dry until they had to be bought at nicer price for Luxottica. Generally, this is why antitrust law needs to actually be enforced. This industry is basically a textbook example of how shit goes wrong if left to itself. For that, you need politicians who aren't bought out by lobbying. Edit. Thanks for the first Reddit award, stranger. The nonprofit world. Unfortunately, most people at the top are in it to make a name for themselves and don't usually care about the mission of the organization. Yeah, I've heard pretty despicable things about the Komen Foundation, like how very little of the funds they raise actually go to cancer care and how they sue other charities that they think are moving into their turf. The last company I worked for was a small nonprofit helping the homeless, and they did care, and did a lot of good work, but the old CEO retired, and the new one the board brought on was more interested in her own ego than anything. Fast forward 2 years from that point, 10 out of an original staff of 35 were let go in the span of 2 months, including me. Several programs had to be scaled back or stopped entirely. The organization came under direct auditing scrutiny from local and state government for questionable financial choices the CEO made, like using funds to travel by air what would normally be a 2-hour drive, repeatedly. And that CEO then resigned because of the hostile work environment created by the city. Another org a friend works for has come under fire for its CEO firing anyone that disagreed with her, especially when they stood up to her making potentially illegal decisions. And that's far from an isolated story. There's a lot of good people in the lower levels, but the C-level execs of these companies are sometimes crazy. Sounds very similar to what's happened in my wife's organization recently. Kind of funny as I read your description. It sounded word for word what happened to hers. Only the new CEO didn't resign yet, but the pandemic has cost them a lot of people going on voluntary employment insurance rather than put up with it. Not sure the org will make it through the pandemic, which is the really sad part considering the community connections and the help they provided. Thank you so much for watching and have a good day.